Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is Astral Projection and Science. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support this channel on Patreon, you can do so. When you join, you get advanced episodes on Sunday, a library of downloaded episodes for your podcast app, Patreon email where we can talk back and forth, and a new chat room for patrons. And if you're interested, there is a link in the description. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like a lesson to learn how to astral project, be glad to work with you. All you have to do is go to that same description, look for the email there, and you can request further information. Okay, let's see here. Astral projection in science. One of the Astral Club members left the question for me and asked why there hasn't been more science and scientific experiments done to verify astral projection. Well, I have three, basic reasons why this hasn't truly happened and may never truly happen. First of all, time drift. Second, the nature of astral travel. And third, scientific blindness. First up, time drift. Science and scientific experiments assume a number of things, and they assume the flow of time, for instance. They assume there's a past and a present and a future. Now we know this is nothing more than time-space illusion, and that this only seems true in the physical. However, for scientists, this is an absolute fact. The problem with time drift in the astrals, when you leave your body, you're likely to drift in time. Numerous times I've left my body in the summer and seen snow outside. In the lower astral, time flows very strangely, and there is no direct past to present to future. So someone could very easily do an experiment which doesn't make any sense because of this weirdness of time. I'll give you some examples. When I did my lottery experiment as a teenager, it wasn't very sophisticated. What I would do is I'd look at the daily number for 3 digits because it was easier to remember. Actually, it was the 4-digit number. Sorry, it was the 4-digit number. It was picked daily. And what I would do is when it was picked, I'd write it on a piece of paper, and then I would tape that paper to my bedroom door. The idea being that I could project into the future and then read that number and then play it. Well, it took me months to accomplish this goal, and I wasted a lot of projections doing it. Eventually, after a lot of failures, I was able to see the number, see the date, and then return to my body and record it. And I did win. I won some nice money for my freshman year in college. But it required a lot of trial and error because many times I'd project and there wouldn't be a paper there, or there would be and I couldn't read it properly. Or there was a lot of things that went wrong until finally I was successful. The bottom line is it wasn't easy. The other is the samovar. My brother was skeptical before he had his first projection. And he said he was going to put something on his table in the basement and that I had to project to his house and tell him what it was. And the next morning, sure enough, I did. I called him up and told him that he had a Russian samovar on his table. He laughed and said, I don't even know what a samovar is. Before the revolution, wealthy people would often have a silver tea cooking set where the tea could be kept warm and could be drunk throughout the day. And the Russians called it a samovar. My brother was unaware that there was any such thing. I just happen to be a historian, so I enjoy and I have this kind of knowledge. He said no, there's a book down there, so for him that was the end of it. It was disproven. It wasn't until several years later where I went over to his house, having forgotten all about this. And I went downstairs, and sure enough, there was that silver samovar sitting on his basement table. And I was shocked when I saw it. And I said, that's the samovar. That's what I saw. And it took him a second or two to realize what I was talking about. And then he told me the story that he'd been driving by locally, and some older gentleman, his wife had passed, and he was moving to Florida, and he was trying to get rid of stuff that he didn't have any use for. And I guess he knew Mike, and he kind of just gave him the samovar. And my brother had brought it back, hoping that his wife could use it for some art project or other. But, she didn't know what to do with it either. So it just kind of sat there on that table. So the time drift plays havoc with anybody trying to do a typical scientific experiment. Once again, we expect there to be a past, a present, a future. And when they get all mixed up, it tends to make a typical scientific method extremely difficult. Lastly, I guess the next one is the nature of astral travel. Astral travel, astral projection, projects through the astral plane. Remote viewing allows a portion of the viewer's consciousness to travel in the physical. So when the CIA and the military did experiments in the late 70s and into the 80s on projection and remote viewing, they found remote viewing was a lot more helpful in trying to gain intelligence about the physical world, because that's what remote viewing is good for. And for anyone who's not sure about remote viewing, essentially how it's different from astral projection is in astral projection, your entire consciousness is leaving your body and it is on the astral plane exploring. In remote viewing, your body is lying on a bed. You're conscious. You're not conscious. Your body is not conscious in an astral projection. You're out because your consciousness is somewhere else. In remote viewing, you're still conscious. You're in your physical body. You're in a deep meditative state, but you're still conscious. And you're sending a portion of your consciousness to a distant place where you can see what's going on and then bring back that intelligence. It's probably going to be a lot easier to do studies, and it probably was, of remote viewing than astral projection. Because we can confirm what's going on in the physical, but you can't confirm what's happening in the astral, not from a physical body. So there's the difference there, where it makes exploration into astral projection extremely difficult. Lastly is scientific blindness. And as far as I'm concerned, this is by far the biggest reason why astral projection has never truly been examined scientifically and may never be truly examined scientifically. The main reason is simple. The vast majority of psychologists, psychiatrists, and scientists are atheists, in that not only don't they believe in any God, which doesn't really matter to me one way or another, but with that means they don't believe in life after death. They believe that when the physical body ceases to exist, that's it. The consciousness is gone. There is no more life. So asking these people to explore a topic which goes against their core beliefs is extraordinarily difficult. And I don't know that they could truly do so impartially. because scientists try to put aside their assumptions, but how do you put aside a core assumption like the disbelief in any existence after death? Because how can you possibly even consider astral projection if you don't believe there is consciousness after death? Because that's the one thing that astral projection actually proves. There was a main study that was published, and this happened back in India. It was published on the 9th of August in 2021. It was described as astral projection, a strange out-of-the-body experience in a dissociative disorder. So keep in mind that even the title of this experiment already is disproving astral projection. It's calling it, instead of calling it a strange phenomena, it calls it a dissociative disorder. So they're already saying that there's a problem with your body and it's giving you this stimuli, which is obviously false. So we're starting with that right off the bat. That is the assumption right off rip with this particular study. In the abstract, they discuss out-of-the-body experiences as hallucinatory visual experiences that involve seeing the physical body placed in an external visual space. Many psychiatric disorders, brain dysfunctions, pharmacological agents, that's drugs for you and me, and altered psychological states are reportedly associated with this phenomena. OBEs have been linked to various brain lesions, particularly in the parietal and temporal regions. Psychiatric disorders, severe emotional states like a near-death experience, substance use, migraine, and epilepsy. But very few have been reported in dissociative identity disorder. They go in to talk about some 15-year-old patient in India. Apparently, he had some trauma as a youth. His mother left them. The father was a bit brutal, and I guess he beat the kid. And the kid started having astral projections, out-of-the-body experiences. And so his father took him to the doctor to try to find out what's wrong with him. So that is the bottom line assumption right there. It's, Doc, there's something wrong with my kid. Try to find out, what's wrong. Try to find out where the error is in his consciousness or in his physical body. The child, who's 15 years old, then goes on to explain some of his experiences. They're really just typical astral projections. He really just leaves his body for about 10 or 15 minutes. In his case, he didn't know what to do. So all he did was float and look down at his body. That was literally all he accomplished, which I can't beat him up for because, quite frankly, he didn't know what else to do. So he went through a complete battery of tests. They really didn't find much of anything. Yet they started throwing drugs at him, serious psychiatric drugs, to try to suppress these delusions or hallucinations, which they assumed automatically was the problem after they ruled out, they checked his brain, all the rest of this stuff. So how did they solve the problem? Well, they put him on a regimen of pharmacological substances. They gave him drugs. And the drugs were able to eliminate this horrible thing that was happening to him called out-of-the-body experiences. Now, what I'll do is I'll leave a link to this whole study so you can read it. I'll put it in the description section. I'm not going to sit there and read this whole darn thing. It was published in the National Institute of Mental Health. The bottom line here is this. When you go into a scientific experiment with a visible bias, and the funny thing is they're so blind that they don't even realize that they're going into this with a bias. because they're so certain of the nature of reality that they take it a priori that what they're doing is right, that of course this isn't real. Of course this is some sort of a delusion, a symptom of a psychiatric illness or a malfunctioning brain. And when you go into the study of astral projection with that in mind, what do you think you're going to find? And I'm afraid that until things really start to change, that's what we're going to be left with. So, unfortunately, I think we're just going to have to let science go off on its way and, let them come up with some physical cures and treatments that'll help the physical body. But I don't think we're going to have to or going to be able to depend upon them for any actual true, unbiased scientific research anytime soon where astral projection or out of the body experiences are involved. If you found that beneficial, hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already, and keep those questions and comments coming. What do you guys think about the scientific blindness that seems to be the major reason why astral projection cannot undergo a true unbiased psychological or psychiatric or scientific study? The other things like the time drift and the nature of astral travel, traveling on the astral plane, are parts of the puzzle, but they're by no means the major parts. It's the scientific blindness. Anyway, go ahead there and leave your questions and comments, and I will see you on the astral plane.